So this is our annual, I do this usually once, maybe twice a year, where we just kind of do a roundup of questions that people have that come up. So I will do my best this morning. I have lots and lots of questions that were sent in from the registration forms, which I've tried to group together. So there's quite a lot of questions. So obviously we won't get to them all individually, but I'm trying to group them. So I might not be directly answering your question, but we'll be answering on a theme. So sort of organize them a bit like that this morning. And then while we're just giving it a couple of minutes to get started, if you would all love to pop your good morning, hello, where you're joining us from in the chat box, just to say good morning to everyone here from all the various different parts of the world, presumably. We'll get cracking then in a few minutes. Good morning, Tricia from Tucson, Stephanie from San Francisco. There's more people coming in. Northern Ireland. Oh, Kate. Hello, Kate. Victoria from New York City. It's warm in New York City today. Boston, Mary, Montana. And Northampton, Massachusetts, presumably. St. Louis, Denver, Desta. Where's Desta from? Presumably. No, another Paulette from New York City, Northern California, the Channel Islands. Oh, how nice. Vegas. Oh, on holidays. Montana, Toronto. Desto's you in Montana. Justin from Toronto. There's a few Canadians with us as well today. Barbara near Tucson. So a couple of you from Tucson as well in the neighborhood. You can probably get together. So, right, what I try to do with these is that lots of people have all these questions that come up all the time. We get these emails of questions all the time. So what I try to do once or twice a year is sort of do a roundup of questions and sort of have this sort of forum to try to answer. To be honest, a lot of people have very similar questions. So I think it's kind of handy to sort of have the group together, because you'll probably find that a question you had, you're sharing. Sometimes we can feel, God, I got such a dumb question, I don't want to ask it. And then you find 10 other people have the same question. So that can be quite reassuring as well. So I have some questions that they generally tend to be about development. I've also got a bunch of questions about connecting and maintaining connections with your own loved ones. And then I've got a bunch of questions really outside the scope of a Q&A on mediumship and spirit communication. But there are a few people asked about the Akashic records. Not my field, not my area, but I do have a good friend in Ireland who does a lot of past life regression and Akashic records work, so I can recommend her to you. And obviously, if you're interested in Casey's Akashic records, Kevin Tedeschi, of course. So I have a bunch of links for you for all of that extra information, which I'll send either in the chat by the end of the class, or we'll put it in the email with the link to the recording for today. So you'll get those links so you can look into those further yourself. Some people ask me about the end of the world, all sorts of predictions. I'm not here for predictions, sorry. But all we can do is hope and pray at this point. Right, so, and some of these questions are way too massive. Is there a spiritual purpose in life? I'm just going to say yes. Getting into the question of the spiritual purpose in life in itself could take us an hour, a week, a year to discuss. But so let me get started on the questions that I got from you guys, starting with mediumship development. I do also want to just let you know that I have, I think I've told some of you this before, I'm not teaching beginners mediumship live anymore. I'm only teaching advanced mediumship live, but I've created 2 quite robust on-demand classes that give you invites to our monthly live practice circles. So the teachings for beginners mediumship now you can get in the on-demand classes. You can find your practice partners, because you have to do all sorts of practices in those. You can join our Spirit Space Facebook community and find practice partners to do those exercises with, and then come to our monthly practice circle. The monthly practice circle now is new. I've started for this reason, to give people doing masterclasses a way to kind of get some live practice in a moderated environment. It's only, just so you know, only open to registered students of mine. It's not a public circle. It's just for students who want to practice what they're learning, right? So it's private group, you just get invited to that if you're doing a masterclass. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but we've got a special offer for the month of February, because now I've got a Mediumship Foundations and a Mediumship Intermediate. So Intermediate is the new course that we're just launching. I'll give you a quick look and we'll come back to this later. So this is the Mediumship Intermediate Masterclass. So you get $150. When you buy if you want to sign up for it now, you can get the bundle with the Foundations and the Intermediate. So together it's 20 sessions and nearly, I think, over 100, maybe 130 individual lessons in it. So it gives, if you want, we'll give you this link in the email as well, but this will give you actually a description of what's in the course. There's an intro there. I won't play this. It's only a couple of minutes long, but you can check that out on your own time. So quite a lot of details about what's in the class, what you'll get from the class. There's a breakdown here. I hope I'm not scrolling too fast now, giving anybody a headache. Also just information about my lineage and the advantages of lineages. Then there's obviously, as I mentioned, the live practice circles and our spirit space community. So you can actually connect with people live, do your practices live, chat, make friends live. There's also, this is a new thing I've introduced, certificate of completion. So anybody who has done the Foundations or Intermediate course, or both, we have a logbook that's included in the course now, and when you log all your practices and your work, you can get a certificate of completion. Once you get the certificate of completion, I just need to see the logs to know, because people were saying, oh yeah, I did the course and coming up for advanced classes, and then I hadn't done any work, didn't know anything at all. So I hadn't done any classes. So now I just ask you to send in your logbooks, and what that does is it makes you eligible for the advanced classes, because they're closed mentoring programs. But everybody needs to have a good solid foundation in evidential mediumship before coming to those. So this is a way to do that, to help you and then give you opportunities to take live classes to advance. Lots of testimonials from very lovely students, a bit about me, a bit more about me, as if you hadn't heard enough about me. And then we have these special intro offers. So we've got the little mediumship bundles here for if you want, you can get both the courses, found beginners and intermediate, for $100 off, or you can just sign up for it individually if you want. So that's that on the course, and just a quick look so you can see what it looks like inside. So all the classes are broken down. So this is a new format for any of you who've done other master classes with me. It's a new format. This time it will track your progress for you. It will let you know where you are in the course, where you've left off. So you don't have to keep trying to remember, oh God, did I do that lesson or not? And there's all this extra bonus workshops related to the content. And of course, lots of different types of very foundational, fundamental, really training for mediumship. So that goes on. So there's 12 of those sessions, and then in the, I don't want to sign up, in the Mediumship Foundations course, as well as the Beginners course, there's 8 sessions in that, and 108. Now the lessons are very small. It's 108 lessons. You're not going to be there till you're 108 yourself, but the lessons are designed to be quite small in little bites so that you can bookmark them, you can return to them, because the thing about mediumship is that we never take everything in the first time. We take in what we are aware of, what we're ready to hear, and then we will move on with our development, and then something that you heard a year ago suddenly makes sense, and then you can go back and listen to it again. So they're designed so that you can kind of pop around back and forth and pick up anything that you I think I remember something about that at some point before, and you go back and just pick up the little lessons. You don't have to scroll through hours and hours to get to that. So that's the course. Like I said, there's $120 off just for the month of February. We'll send you out links and all that kind of stuff after class. But the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of the questions that I got asked today, I actually cover in these classes. The other thing I would encourage you to do is on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram account, I have somebody who does social media for me, and they pull clips from all of my classes and they post all these 90-second clips. So if you follow me on Instagram, just scroll back through the reels, or on my YouTube channel, you'll see lots and lots of questions that have been asked already answered there. So they're just free resources. If you want to go, if you've got a question, you can scroll. Or sometimes you don't realize you had a question until you see somebody else had asked it. So I'd encourage you, we'll send you out the link to my Instagram account and out to the development classes as well. What level? The Eternal Bonds course is not a mediumship class. That class is designed specifically for you to develop and maintain relationships with your own loved ones. So learning how to communicate and maintain connections with your own loved ones is different from learning mediumship, which is learning a skill and practices and dealing with strangers for strangers. So mediumship development is taught in a very different way from the way I teach Eternal Bonds. So Eternal Bonds is a very personal journey, and it's really about you and your loved ones. I'm teaching you, I don't have Eternal Bonds, didn't pull it up here. For those of you who don't know what this is, I have an Eternal Bonds on-demand class as well. That, let me see if I can share this. Share screen. Here it is. So the Eternal Bonds, can you see that now? Let me put, oh, here we go. So Eternal Bonds is this course here. And this is for people who are not trying to develop mediumship to go out and start working with the public and working with the bereaved. This is for people whose loved ones are in the afterlife, who want to just learn to maintain that and develop their very unique personal language between them and their loved ones, and how to develop the sensitivity, how to work with signs, all of that kind of thing. So you can find out this on my website as well. It's quite a lot of detail on what this course is as well. But like I said, Eternal Bonds, and Eternal Bonds is not necessarily for mediums. Eternal Bonds is for anybody, because everybody has the ability to maintain a relationship and maintain communication with their own loved ones. So that's what this course is geared towards. It's just between you and your loved ones, and learning how to understand the language between the two of you. Quite a different mechanism from having to learn evidential mediumship, how to work with all of these different senses, how to work with people sitting in front of you, work with strangers. So so to answer the question that was popped in the chat there from who popped it in, Carol, I think. Yeah, Carol, it's Eternal Bonds is not any level. That's a very personal journey between you and your loved ones. All right. Okay, good. All right, marvelous. So jumping on to questions, I'll go through, since all of you registered, anyone who registered in the last sort of hour, I don't have your questions. Anybody who registered before that, I probably have them here, and I will get through them as many as I can. Like I said, I've kind of bundled them. And then what we'll do is we'll get through as many of these, and then we'll do sort of a short, sort of 10-minute little practice. I was thinking maybe, because it's going to be short, maybe we'll do meeting a loved one, meeting a guide, something like that, rather than actual mediumship, which we actually obviously need a circle to do. And for any of you who are, I forgot to mention, anybody who is already a student who has either taken a live course with me or is taking a master class, our first practice circle, I think, is on Saturday in 2 weeks. So you'll get an email, you'll get that up, let's put that in the email as well. So that's for registered students, you'll get an email about that. So that's a live class. So anybody who's interested in the mediumship practice, come along to that. We won't do that in this class today because we really need to do that in breakout rooms. So we need a whole hour just for that. Right, now getting on with the questions. I'm going to just start with sort of foundational mediumship questions. So Nancy, I think I saw Nancy, you're in here somewhere. You asked just a question that comes up, the difference between building the power and meditation and attuning. So I talk about, for those of you who haven't done this, and again, I would say go to the YouTube channel, go to the Instagram channel. I've given entire talks and lectures on these sorts of subjects, and I've given very short little answers in our Mediumship in the Afterlife Q&A on Instagram and YouTube as well. So you can probably, if you feel like I've skimmed something, you didn't quite get the gist of it, you can certainly go to those free resources and learn more. So for mediumship, we need to basically attune, and for Eternal Bonds as well, we need to attune, move ourselves into basically an altered state, which is called attunement. And what we're doing is we are attuning to the vibration of the dimension of the unseen world. So what we do when we're practicing or develop mediumship is we learn to what's called build the power within the incarnate spirit to be able to make that attunement, to make that connection, to move ourselves into the altered state. So we're basically moving ourselves into, for want of a better expression, into that space between worlds where they can come meet us. And we're meeting sort of between worlds. And so there's a practice on my website in the community section called sitting in the power. And what that is, I think I changed it to attunement practice. And what that is, it's helping you actually go through the mechanisms to actually change your energetic vibration, to build the power to make that connection. It's a very energizing practice, something you are doing active. It's very active and energizing. Meditation is something that we do for ourselves to still the mind and to be very present. In meditation, we're not doing anything. Meditation is for ourselves. So both practices are really needed to be a good medium, because meditation really helps us get very, very still, sort of get rid of attachments. It also can be very healing. Let's go triggers and associations. But importantly, what meditation does is it helps us to better understand our own mind, and know when our own mind is moving, when our own mind is interfering, when our own mind is wandering. And so it's very good for us just in terms of our own mental health, but it's also very important in mediumship, because a few of the questions that came up go, how do I know if it's me or the spirit world? If you're familiar with the way your mind works, the more familiar we can become with the way our own mind works, the more we'll recognize if it has interfered, and if something has come from the mind. And if we build a strong attunement practice, and so if we are able to move into the power and recognize the altered states, then when we are in the altered state, when we can sense that we're in the altered state from doing these practices, when we move into our mediumship practice, when we're in the middle of a communication, we will feel an energetic difference if we've dropped out. So if we feel like we're not in the power, or we're not attuned when we get a piece of information, it will have come from your head, right? From your imagination. If you are in the power, it will have come from the spirit world. And so the attunement practice and the meditation practices combined are very good and very essential practices, really, I would say, for starting out on mediumship. And somebody else asked, had been away from mediumship for a long time, and was asking, what's the best way to kind of come back into the practice? And I would say with attunement and meditation practices first, working with your own attunement, working with your meditation practices. Another thing that's very helpful for that is healing. And we do have guided healing practices in the community on the website as well. That's the community section of the website is free. So this is all resources you can use for free. The healing really helps to build that sort of sensitivity and stillness and power as well. So I always recommend healing. Some of the best mediums I know are also healers. Healing is a marvelous way also to support your mediumship. So if you've been away and you're coming back in, I would say start there. And then slowly, and this relates to another question somebody asked, was how do you know if you're ready to work professionally? And I would say start small, start doing maybe a little psychic fair, or just doing a little salon or something with people, and just do the practice. People often think, oh, I'm ready to work professionally when I can get loads of information, I can keep placing my contacts. And that's true. When you can consistently get specific details, place your contact, be able to work with somebody, you can do that repeatedly and consistently, then you can start thinking about working professionally. But what I would say is make sure you can work for at least an hour, whether that's 4 to 6 small short contacts or 1 or 2 long contacts, because you're going to need that kind of stamina. But the other thing that I would say is that you need to make sure that you feel powerful and confident and stable in your own mediumship, which leads into another question of somebody asking, how can I build confidence in mediumship? The thing is that we often think that, we're going to go out to do mediumship and we're going to sit in front of somebody who is bereaved and they're sad and upset, and we're going to give them this beautiful message, and it will be like a ray of hope in their life, and we'll do this wonderful work for spirit, right? And we'll feel great about our mediumship. But that's not always the case, right? Because a lot of people who are bereaved are very angry and are looking for somebody to blame and looking for somebody to lash out on. I'm sure any of you have been deeply bereaved. I've gone through those. It's a phase of grief. I've gone through that phase. And sometimes somebody will come to you and what they really need is therapy. What they really need is grief counseling. And you and your mediumship need to be able to be in a situation like that, be able to refer them to a counselor, to step away from the sitting so that you're not affected by it, because you then have to go work with another person after them. right? So I would say make sure that you're confident enough within your mediumship, on top of just your skill, make sure you're confident enough within yourself as a medium that you can recover from a difficult client, because believe me, they're out there. And where you don't feel a need, I actually was did a podcast the other day, and this question came up. We were talking about this for a while. When you got the person that comes in with their arms crossed and says, prove it to me. And then they're saying, okay, tell me what's in my pocket. Tell me, if you can tell me, if my wife can tell you what I have in my pocket, then I'll believe she's here. That's a psychic trick. A psychic can tell you that. So you've got to be able to handle those sort of situations without feeling backed into a corner, or without feeling like you've got to prove yourself. Or without taking it personally and being upset and sort of knocked on your bum because somebody has been very angry towards you. So these are things people don't talk about in circles and practice circles, but these are important things, because you have to be able to, you need to protect your own mediumship as well. All right. So I would factor that in too. So a few other questions were really just developmental questions. How can I develop my sensitivity to what I am receiving? How can I receive clearer evidence? This sorts of things. To be honest, that just takes practice and work and training and sitting and commitment. There's lots of practices you can do to develop your sensitivity, the sitting in the power, the meditation practices. I've given in the Instagram reels, there are some actual little practices for developing your clairvoyance and developing your clairsentience, things like that, clairaudience. There are little techniques and practices that are in the Instagram reels for that. I won't go into there, but basically that just takes development. I think in this day and age, sometimes we're told these things, we see these things, as one day we pop up and decide, oh, I think today I'll be a medium, and now tomorrow I'm just ready to have my own TV show. That's not, it takes years and years of work to develop the authentic sensitivity. One thing most of you have heard me say many times is it takes less energy to do psychic work than it does to do mediumship work. So the psychic works with the spirit incarnate, the person sitting in front of you. The medium is working with the spirit discarnate. Now, it takes a lot more energy. A psychic can read your aura and pick up 20 spot-on facts about your loved one from reading your aura without ever being connected to the spirit world. Learning to tell the difference takes time and training. To know that you're actually always working mediumistically, or to know when you've picked something up psychically from the person in front of you, then you can say, I didn't get this from your dad, I got this from you. And I say this because I've heard horror stories of people say, oh, I've got your dad here. He says he doesn't really like your husband. He thinks you should leave him. And what they're actually getting is they're getting an upset in the client because they just had an argument with the husband, and they're just picking up on the energy, and then they give it. And if you give a message like that from the dad, the client is going to put an awful lot more weight on that than you just saying, oh, I think I picked this up from you. We have an ethical responsibility in mediumship as well. And so we have to factor in the ethics. We have to factor in people's vulnerabilities. We have to factor in the psychology of the person sitting in front of us. So mediumship is not just about, can I get the cause of death, the shoe size, the number of the house, the colour of the car, right? That's all very beginner's mediumship stuff. Let's just get a bunch of facts, right? Getting those facts, you just have to keep doing it. Just keep practicing, keep sitting in the power, keep doing the little exercises I've talked about in the Instagram reels to develop clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience. And you just do it over and over and over all the time. And it will change. You may find that your clairvoyance is fantastic at the beginning. That's very common. And then one day it can just disappear. And now you're forced to work with clairsentience, and you feel like you're starting all over again because you had this marvelously developed clairvoyance and never really developed your clairsentience. And now all of a sudden you can't see a thing. And you feel like you're starting over again with your clairsentience. God, I've got to start all of this from the beginning. But that's how it goes. The spirit world will do that. And as soon as you get very sensitive and very clairsentient, they'll take that away, and now you're relying on your clairaudience. And this will happen because you're not doing this alone. You're working with a team, right? You're always working with a team, and they're helping you along as well. And so your mediumship will go through waves and different iterations, and that's just part of development. So developing your sensitivity, in particular healing, is a great way to develop sensitivity, clairsentience. And then there's lots and lots of practice for clairaudience and clairvoyance that you can grab off the Instagram reels. I don't really have time to go into them now, but here because, obviously they take too long. But we actually do them in the beginner's class. So all of this stuff are really beginner's questions, and they're all covered in the foundations in the intermediate class. So you can get more details on them in the classes as well, if you want to really make that kind of commitment to your development. Somebody's asking me, what do I do if I'm not naturally sensitive? Same thing, you just develop sensitivity. I would also be very careful of the words all of you say to yourselves. So there's a bunch of people here saying, I'm not sensitive, I have all these blocks. If you tell yourself you've got blocks, you'll have blocks. If you tell yourself you're not sensitive, you'll be not sensitive. You've got to tell yourself you're developing. It's like nobody starts in a piano, goes in to learn the piano and is playing fifth in the first week. You'd be lucky to be playing chopsticks by the end of the week. Same for mediumship. People say, mediumship is a natural ability. It is, but everything is a natural ability. Painters have a natural ability. Writers have a natural ability. Musicians have a natural ability. But they all also develop it. Same with mediumship. So we don't want to be thinking, mediumship is the gift. No, what we do with the mediumship determines whether we're gifted. A gifted pianist, I couldn't even play. You could put me in a piano class for a month. I wouldn't even be able to play chopsticks at the end of it. But we all have some ability, just some more than others, and some people are more committed to their development and their training. I grew up in the House of Olympians, and I've just seen the amount of work it takes day in, day out, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning every single day. My brother was an Olympic swimmer, my father's an Olympic swimming coach. The commitment it takes to develop anything. So if we think that, but there's this idea that mediumship is some kind of, special gift. Now it's like anything, everybody's gifted, but we have a responsibility to make the commitment to training it. And so don't tell yourself things like you have blocks, just remind yourself you're still developing. Now, I don't have a block to this, I need to find a way to develop. First, if you say I've got a block to my, to receiving clear evidence, there's no block to receiving clear evidence. It's just training. I just need to develop my clairs, my clairsentient, my clairvoyance, my clairaudience more to receive more detail. You've got to always think in positive ways about this. Be careful with words you use to speak to yourself, right? So if you want to develop more evidence, the holy grail of mediumship, it doesn't matter. I've been doing this 15 years. I know Colin Bates been doing it 40 years. Everybody is also looking for more detail. So that never goes away, right? But as we develop and as we go forward and as we do the practices, and a lot of these practices to develop these senses, you can do just in your normal waking world. Standing on the escalator. I've got one practice I always have people do. Sense who's behind you. In New York, anyone in New York will appreciate this. We're always on escalators, right? And so stand on the escalator. Do you get a sense of who's behind you? Look for colours, feel feelings, try to put colours on the feelings. So these are all lessons and practices that we do in the classes and that I have snippets of in the different reels that are out there. These little practices, so you don't have to just wait for a Thursday night to go sit in your practice circle or your class for 2 hours. You can do these practices to develop your clairs all day, every day, out in the real world, even in New York City. So there are those practices. So I would say what you can do to practice your clairsentience, if we've got time at the end, we might do 1 or 2 practices, is the practices you can do to develop your clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, or practices you can do all day, every day. The minute you wake up in the morning, having your coffee, you can do these practices because you can do those on your own time. What those are doing is developing your psychic sensibilities, your psychic skills, your psychic senses, which we use in mediumship. But you don't have to be sitting there. You don't have to keep going, I've got to find somebody to sit for me or I've got to find a circle to do this work. You can do it. I used to do it on the escalator. That's why I said escalator. The Lexington Avenue escalator in New York City must be about 3 stories tall. And I used to do this all the time. Who's behind me? Who's behind me? All the time. I used to do this. Standing at the traffic lights, sensing into who's behind me. And you get really good at it. You get really good. Oh, I can feel there's 2 people standing beside me. You know. Yes, there's a baby standing. I was on the Lex sub escalator one time. I was the only one. It was really late. I was the only one on the escalator. And I stood there and I was going down and I thought, oh, there's a young Asian guy behind me, right? So turn around, there's nobody behind me. Go the whole way down the escalator. When I get off at the end, I turn around and I look up, it's a young Asian guy getting on at the top. So the more you do this, you can see the farther the energy field spread to be able to get a sense of that guy that far away. So initially you do these practices, you might get a sense of somebody standing who's only breathing down your neck, right? But over time, you'll get much more sensitive to this. So there's lots of these similar exercises. So clairaudience, you can listen to a complex piece of music, for example, and just attune your ear to one instrument. And that instrument will probably, if it's sort of a concerto or something, that instrument will come in and out. If it's a symphony, that instrument will come in and out. But you just may hold your ear on that one instrument. Helps you to fine tune your ear. So there's lots and lots of these little practices that you can do to develop these sensitivities. So we cover all of these in obviously the beginners and intermediate mediumship because they are fundamental to mediumship. But please don't tell yourself things like you have blocks, because you don't. You're just developing. And everybody's like that. Everybody. Sometimes you'll work with evidence and you'll be getting the whole detail and the whole story of how somebody died. This happens to me. And then you go through a phase where you just couldn't tell you how anybody died. I'm not picking it up at all. This is the way mediumship works. It always works in waves. So don't expect it to be the same every single time either. And we wouldn't want it to be the same every single time, because it would be so boring after a while. So I hope I've kind of clustered loads of those questions into that one answer. Then somebody's asking me the fear of resistance to opening up to mediumship. There's nothing within mediumship itself to fear, obviously, we know that, but if you've got some fear, obviously that would be something we would have to work through in a private session, so I wouldn't be able to really get into that on this. We would really need to sit and really begin to understand, what are you afraid of? So if you've got any sort of fears around that, because, mediumship is really just stepping into an awareness, not even moving anywhere. It's just turning our awareness to our part in the eternal stream of consciousness, and being able to hear what not just in our head, but it's in somebody else's head, in that stream of consciousness. We're in that stream of consciousness all the time, whether you know it or not, whether you think it or not, whether you think you're doing mediumship or not, you're always there. But if you've got some kind of fear there, then that's going to be too nuanced and too complex for this. So I would say really reflect on exactly what is the fear, and then start finding ways to break that down, start finding ways to identify what exactly is you fearful of. That's why any of you who've done the Eternal Bonds course, the whole section of it on myth and misconception, I'm actually thinking of writing a book on myths and misconceptions, because we have all this inherited superstition. And so sometimes that can be lingering, and then you need to get rid of that. You need to challenge those beliefs, if you're afraid of these things. So Vi Kipling has written a nice book called On the Spiritualists, Myths and Misconceptions, which you can get from the bookstore at the Arthur Findlay College. I think they'll mail it to you as well. And she did it a while ago. I'm thinking of doing an updated version, but we really need to start challenging where some of these myths and misconceptions come from. So for example, I've heard this, and this has done so much harm. People telling a medium told a mother that her son, who had died by suicide, could not go into the light, that he was earthbound because he had committed suicide. Right? Now, in what medieval world is that medium existing? The idea of being an earthbound spirit comes from Homer, so it's a Greek classic fiction. And it comes from Patroclus. His whole thing was Achilles had to bury him, give him the proper Grecian funeral rites for his spirit to be able to rest. And now, 2,000 years later, we're still dragging that old chestnut with us. Right? Came from fiction. A lot of these come from fiction. A lot of these beliefs come from the fact that the Protestants got rid of purgatory in the 1500s. A lot of these beliefs come from Dante, which again is a fiction based on Christian philosophy that's coming from the Middle Ages. So all of these myths and misconceptions, there is no veracity to any of them, and I can say that. What they are is misinterpretations, misunderstandings, things that have sort of entered into the cultural stream over the last 2,000 years that people don't even know where they came from. So if you have a belief like that, have a look and see, where did it come from? Is this an old Greek thing? Is this an old Reformation thing? Because I guarantee you that's where you'll find the origins of it. And then you can dismiss it. So if that's where your fears are, that's what I would encourage you to do there. And also check out Vi Kipling's book if you want. I think you might be able to order it on, I think you can get on the snu.org.uk, I think you can buy it, and you probably can get it on Amazon as well. Vi Kipling. What else? good at connecting but not deciphering answers. So somebody's asked me about they can get information but can't decipher what it means. If you were trying to decipher what it means, you were not in the flow, you were not in the power, you were in your head, right? Because you will never need to sit there going, somebody showed me an orange, and an image of an orange, for example. Now, what could that woman be on about with an orange? What could that orange mean? The minute you start asking those questions, you're in your head, you're not in the power, you're not connected to that woman. And so that's a matter of not deciphering answers, but actually surrendering to the flow, so that clairsentiently or with your claircognition, you just know what it means. Because the mother shows you an orange, she's also telling you why. What you need to do is get out of the way, get the chatter of your head out of the way. So you're not going, oh, what does that mean? It's okay, all right, let me just shut up, get quiet, tell me what it is that you want to say about that. And then just just step back into the floor and let it come to you. Again, this is just development, this is just about training, this is just about doing it over and over again. And it's a really good, and it's a very important question, Grace, who asked it, because an awful lot of people, again, there's a lot of mediums out there who actually really haven't done any proper training or education. Most of you who study with me know I'm a huge advocate for actual education on all of this, because what happens is that, somebody shows somebody something, and then the medium, I say medium loosely, doesn't know what it means, and just that goes into the head to start trying to interpret it, and then we'll give the person a whole heap load of a story that's got nothing to do, that they've just made up out of their own analysis in their own head. That's not mediumship, right? Mediumship is staying within the flow. Somebody shows you an orange, wait for the rest of the story to flow in behind it. The minute you start getting into try to grab at, snatch at, what does that mean? You've stopped the flow. Does that make sense? Yeah. A few people looking bewildered. Yeah, a few people nodding. I'll go with the nods. All right, beautiful. Somebody a sitter, I'm not sure, Liz. Is Liz here? I didn't see Liz coming in. Sitters who claim the spirit of an unborn child or an unmet grandparent. I'm not really sure. It's only half question, Liz. So somebody who claims that the spirit is an unborn child or an unmet grandparent or great-grandparent. You can certainly have in a mediumship session, you can certainly have a grandparent you've never met or a great-grandparent you've never met come through. I've had my great-grandmother, who died 10 years before I was born, has often come. In the early days of my development, she came quite a lot. But they have to be able to share information, and they're intelligent enough to know this. So they will choose details that you can verify, even if it's just an old photograph you saw, or if it's something about where they grew up. There will have to be details within their communication that can prove to you who they are. And so you can't say, I've got your gran here, you never met her. Oh, okay, let me tell you, she had this blue hair, and you didn't know that? Oh, she did. And she smoked cigar. You didn't know that? Oh, she did. That's nonsense. But if she comes and she goes, I've got your grandmother here, her name is Mary, and she's got 3 dogs. Yes, I saw a photograph of my great-grandmother with 3 dogs. You do know what I mean? So there's going to be stuff in there that you can verify. If you can't verify any of it, then there's no point. And the spirit world is intelligent, so they're not going to come. If there's absolutely nothing they can share to show who they are. So that can happen. An unborn child depends. If you mean a communication from an unborn child who's still in utero, that would technically be psychic information. I've often had messages from friends, who were beyond 5 months, a couple of times I've had that very clear, and it feels very different, it looks very different from psychic information, but details that came from, so a friend of mine was, I think, 6 months pregnant at the time. When I woke up in the morning, I saw an image of her in a wedding dress in the Botanical Gardens in Brooklyn, right? And I called her, I said, are you getting married? Because she had a boyfriend. She said, no. And I said, that's the bizarrest thing. And the image looked very different. The way it came, it just had a different feeling to it than normal psychic imagery that I get. And I said, it's funny because I just saw an image of you in a wedding dress in the Botanical Gardens. She said, I'm on my way to a wedding in the Botanical Gardens. And so I've noticed that sort of thing happening, but it's always somebody who's further along. I've never had that with somebody who's a couple of months pregnant. It's always been 5 months or longer. But that would technically be information from the unborn child, which is technically psychic information because the unborn child is in the physical space. If they mean an unborn child who was never born, that's complete speculation. How can we know that, you know? I've had, if it was a child that was stillborn or carried to full term or died very early, we can have communications from them, right? But there would have to, again, be specific details about the nature of that child. So my sister was stillborn, but I've had her come visit, and she got caught in the umbilical cord in birth. And very early on in my development, when I started working with this first, a medium I know, a friend of mine, said she was giving me this, I have this little child here, this little child, for ages, could not figure out who this was she had. And then eventually she said she's got all these daisies. And I used to make daisy chains when I was a kid in the garden. I said, oh no, I used to do that. And then she said, and somebody actually drew her once for me, and she looked like me. And so I said, she looks like you. I actually have a little sketch of her up there over the books, and she looks just like me, except she's got blue eyes. But this friend of mine said, yeah, no, she's got, and I didn't know who she was talking about, couldn't understand it. It was the first time I heard from her. And then she says she got caught in the cord. And I went, oh, holy God, that's my sister. So I feel that it seems, and I want to be very delicate about this, but it does seem that when a baby is almost full term, we can get communications from them. I think somebody just popped something about miscarriage in the chat. I would have to say I can't really speak to miscarriages, to be honest. It's very sensitive, and I don't want to make any blanket statements about miscarriages. It would really depend. If a child comes and can give specific information that can be verified, like the got caught in the cord, like specific things, then you could say it. But an awful lot of women have miscarriages, you know, and it's very sort of easy for a medium to say, oh, you've had a miscarriage. I have a baby here, it must be a miscarriage. It may or may not be, but how many women do you know who've had miscarriages? To me, it's a very safe bet to do a cold reading. So if you're going to say it, I'd be very, 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 very careful about that. I'm very careful about a medium who says that to you. If they can't give you any sort of specifics around it, like I said, I've never had communication from an in vitro child under 5 months. That's not to say the consciousness is not present, but I've never myself received verifiable information under that, I would say. And I say that having had a miscarriage myself. So I would love to say, oh yeah, your baby grew up, he's got blonde hair and he's this and he's an artist and whatever. But it's all fantasy. So I would say I would have to take that on a case-by-case basis, to be honest. So I wouldn't like to it's very sensitive, it's very easily abused, and so I really wouldn't like to make blanket statements about the miscarriage situation, all right? Or abortions either, for that matter. Let me see, what else have I got? What's the most dependable way to tap into the spirit for a mediumship session? So presumably you mean if you are the medium, how can you? That really depends. That's different for everybody. Everybody works differently. So you'll need to develop your own process. Again, when I'm teaching beginners mediumship, we do work through different options, different ways for people to explore and experiment with that. Some people listen to music, get right there into it. Some people listen to chanting. Some people just sit in the power. Very different for everybody. So I do generally, when we're doing beginners development, experiment with lots of different ways to do that, to help everybody find a way that sort of reliably works for them. And like I said, it'll work for a while and then it'll change and it'll become something else. That's the nature of it. What we don't want to do in mediumship is start clinging to the way things used to be. It's never a good idea. And practicing mediumship in a group, is it possible to pick up information from others? Yes, of course. We're always picking up information from others. And this is, again, where the training is important, to identify the difference between what you're picking up from the spirit world and what you're picking up from the incarnate spirit within the human form. Because we realize it or not, we're always, somebody gets on the subway, looks at you funny, and you picked something, a vibe like in a split second. You just got a psychic impression from that person. We're always doing that. We're always communicating like that. So when we do more training, we start to learn to really feel and sense and know the nuances in the difference between information coming from a discarnate spirit to an incarnate spirit, or like I said, even from an in utero spirit is different from an incarnate spirit and a discarnate spirit. But the more we work with it and the more development and the more practice we do, the better we get. Again, it just comes down to practice. I would love to have a magic wand to wave fairy dust all over you and send you all out into the world, but unfortunately you have to do the work. Okay, tricky, but Linda, I think Linda's here. I think I saw Linda here. When receiving messages, how can you tell if they're showing you the age they were when they died or an earlier time period? That again, practice, you just get more experience with that. You'll get a sense of working with your clairaudience and clairsentience together, where you can see some. This happens a lot with people who were fabulous when they were younger and really decrepit when they were older, and they just don't want to be remembered as decrepit, so come back when they're just fabulous. But you'll also get a clairsentient. They will share with you a clairsentient impression with that. That's so that you just kind of know, or claircognition, where you just kind of know that's them when they were fabulous, but they were fabulous because they must have been decrepit when they were. I always know if I see somebody looking fabulous and I get a sense that they weren't that age. I know that they were really withered in their old age because they don't want to be remembered like that. Sometimes you'll see an old-fashioned hairstyle, old-fashioned dress. That's a dead giveaway if they show you that. Again, it comes with the experience of working with combination of your clairvoyance, claircognition and clairsentience. Just comes with practice over time. And just getting feedback from your sitter, because you learn from it. You learn, oh, I remember this happened before and this was what that was, this sort of thing. So again, just practice, no easy way around it. I think that's mostly it for the mediumship development questions. I have a bunch of questions about your own loved ones, and I'll just start at the top. So Colleen, I had a few contacts with somebody who recently passed over in the immediate period of time after them passing over and wants to communicate more. That's just really a matter. This is what the Eternal Bonds course was designed for. And like I said, if you go to the YouTube playlist that's I have, or the Instagram reels, I do talk about this quite a lot in those little reels. I think we post about 4 or 5 of those reels a week. There's nearly one every day, so there's quite a lot of questions answered there. To communicate more, you need to develop your own sensitivity, to learn to work with signs. You need to learn the nuances of how you and your loved one communicate, because the language my loved one and I have between us is going to be different from the language you have and your loved one have. The same way is when you're here on your feet. Different loved ones, different relationships communicate in their own nuanced different ways. And that continues. And so you will really learn how to work with signs, learn how to develop your own sensitivity, learn how to recognize the language of the spirit. It's a language you learn like anything else. And again, I have an entire course designed around this, so obviously I can't get into all of it in our little Q&A here. You might want to check out the Eternal Bonds course, or go check out the reels or the Q&A, the playlist on YouTube, for different techniques for how to understand, because a lot of the time the loved one is present, the loved one is trying to communicate with us, and we're not realizing what they're doing, but they're always there. There's loads of times where a really common one, for instance, is we're just sort of on about our business and sort of thinking about, got to pay the electricity bill or whatever, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, thought of our loved one or some memory out of the blue pops into our heads, almost interrupts our thoughts, and we go, wasn't that a nice memory? And we think we've just remembered them. And that's a classic example of them remembering you, their thought touching your mind. If you find your thoughts, for example, are interrupted, it's always them. Synchronicities, them. Signs, learning how to work with signs. And when I say signs, I don't mean there's a robin on my windowsill sign. Signs that are specific and so like a sign from my father will be very different from a sign from my partner. And I can recognize because I can see them in them. And so we learn these things. It's just a process. It's just like learning a language over. You've had a language where you've intimately understood each other in your lives. That intimacy is going to continue into the spirit world, and you work with all of those nuances so that you end up with a very special shared communication between you and your loved one that is different from the shared communication anybody else has. And for instance, my mother and I communicate very differently to the way my partner and I communicate, obviously. But that's the way it was in life. It's the way it still is in the afterlife, right? So just, I would say, communicating more is just learning what spirit communication looks like, feels like, and what it is for your specific loved one. So you could check out the Eternal Bonds course, or just check, if you don't want to do a whole course, check out the Q&A on the, I think I might even have a whole workshop on that on the YouTube channel, I can't remember. But there's loads of stuff out there on that as well, if you want to have a noodle around as well and see if you pick anything up from that. Joanne, how can I connect more to my mother on a daily basis? I would say, it gets to a point where it becomes a bit unrealistic to be expecting sort of a burning bush on a daily basis. We get to a point where we just learn to recognize that our loved one is present. When they were running around on their 2 feet, they weren't sort of attached to us by a string, following us around all day, everywhere we went. And it's not going to be like that in the spirit world. But if you turn your mind and you say, Mum, are you there? She will be there. She will answer. My mother, it's probably just because it's my mother, interrupts my thoughts all the time. I just think somebody, my mother chimes in, oh, Jesus, where are you coming from? Do you know? So you'd be surprised how often there are always somebody listening to your thoughts. So if you want to communicate with your mother on a daily basis, the easiest thing to do without exhausting yourself or exhausting her or becoming obsessive is just talk to her. Just talk to her. She can hear your thoughts. Just be open. If you have a sudden memory of her, if anything comes up, a synchronicity, it's your mother speaking back and answering you as well. If you want to ask her a question, ask her a question. She will find a way to point you to the answer, right? Easy stuff you can do on a daily basis. What we don't want to do is expect the lights to be turning on or the furniture to be moving every day, right? That gets a bit unrealistic. That happens at the beginning, just, oh, I'm here. Oh, wow, she's still here. But once that's done, I'm going to have a little rest. Can you imagine how exhausting that must be? Then it becomes more subtle, more fluid, and more intimate. All right? Tips when you, this was a mediumship question. Tips when you feel like you've hit a wall when you're sitting in the power. Again, please don't say you things like I've hit a wall. You just are where you are at this point as you sit in the power, and you just sit with it. You just sit with it. You let it be, and it'll become something else as you go. Right? Does that make sense? Oh, sorry, I didn't ask that. So somebody asked me for a tip when you feel like you have hit a wall when sitting in the power. And again, I would say, be mindful of that. If you tell yourself you've hit a wall, you'll create a wall to hit. The mind is very malleable. So you just sit in the power. And it'll, like I said, things go in waves and dips, and you just stay with it. Just stay with it. If you wanted, you could try different. You could try open awareness practice. You could try meditation practice, asana practice. You could switch it up a bit. But please don't be telling yourself you've got blocks or walls or anything else, because if you tell yourself that, you'll make that happen for yourself. So again, there's another question similar to one I've already answered, which is, why do I have great communication with my husband in spirit, then gaps of time go by with no communication? It always happens. And it's not that there's no communication, it's just that sometimes communication is more obvious than others. But the thing is that if you turn your thought, if you ask a question, they will always hear. Just because they're not yakking in your ear constantly, it doesn't mean they're not there. They're always there. We've got to start. I think there's this sort of misconception that there's some kind of geography involved, and that we're here and they're somewhere else, and now they've got on the bus or a train, they've gone to some other state or something, and now I can't hear from them anymore. There is no geography. There is no geography. Right? There is just the stream of consciousness. And we know from consciousness theory, the latest theories in consciousness theory, is that we are multidimensional beings. So we are always in that stream of consciousness, because that's all there is. That's what the one is. That's what God is. It is the unity of all things that we are still in. We have an illusion now, because we're in a physical reality, that we're separate from it, but we are not. This is why psychism works. This is why healing works. This is why mediumship works, is because we are still in the stream. We are always in the stream. We are never separated from it. And so the sort of latest theories in consciousness theory is that that consciousness is not within the brain. The consciousness is flowing everywhere, all pervasive. The brain is an antenna that's tuning in a little radio, one little frequency, and that's us yapping. And when the brain dies, it's like the radio. If the radio dies, does the transmission stop? Of course not, right? There's just no radio to tune it in, and so it's still existing in the waves. So we have to really start thinking more in 21st century terms about the nature of consciousness and our part in it. And so it's not like my husband. It's not like there's no gaps in the communication. It's just that we're all in the stream, and maybe you're over here doing this and he's over there doing that, and then you'll shout into the. Come on, have you ever been in the kitchen washing dishes and your husband's out in the garden gardening, and you shout out, "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" or something? Do you know what I mean? It's like that easy. It's like just because he was in the garden didn't mean your communication stopped. It just meant you were doing something and then you shout out and then they're there. So they're always there. Does that make sense? I think we really need to start normalizing this. We've inherited an awful lot of very old medieval beliefs around this, but we really, I think, need to really think about this more as 21st century sort of idea of an all-pervasive eternal stream of consciousness, of which we are all in all the time. And then we, in our body for a little while, tuning in our little droplet of consciousness, get out of our body, we're just free-flowing with our little droplet of consciousness. The real question for me is, I'm really curious about, how does the actual stream work? Forget the rest of it. How does the stream work? To me, that's the most fascinating question. A few people ask me about Akashic records. I don't do Akashic records. I don't do past lives, any of that sort of stuff. I'm a Buddhist. People always are surprised when I say that. But I come from a Zen tradition. Eastern Zen Buddhism is very different from American Buddhism or Western Buddhism. But I have a friend who is very well versed. She's a level 3 QHHT Dolores Cannon practitioner. She does a lot of Akashic record work. I'll send you her email, her website you can check out. And then, of course, Kevin Tedeschi, who we had with us last month, talks a lot about Casey and the Akashic records, so I'll send you a link to his website as well for those interested in past lives and Akashic records. All right, so somebody else, Sandra, why is it so difficult to make a contact? Again, it's not. If you tell yourself it's difficult, it will be. Again, it says third time lucky. Be careful what you tell yourself. It's not difficult to make a contact. You just need to know where the information is floating around. If you're expecting it to come in neon lights, you'll be looking in the wrong place, right? It's just a matter of, again, very, very basic developmental mediumship. It's not difficult to make. Anybody can make a contact. You just sort of need to know what a contact looks like, what it feels like, how to surrender to it. Big thing that we are really bad at is surrender. All of us. We're just the nature of our culture. Surrender. Let somebody else bring it to you. Again, it's it's sort of like that's the sort of first lesson in mediumship development. But again, if you're interested, pop along to one of the development courses. It'll bring you through all of that, or at least go and listen to some of the free stuff that's out there. There's also on my website a whole bunch of free lectures and workshops and stuff as well in the community area, which is free. Why do some people not sense anything? Again, I think I've talked about that already. Developing your own sensitivity. Everybody senses anything. If you can sense something in physical life, if you can feel angry or sad or happy or anything else, if you feel that in yourself in the physical world, you can most definitely also feel that when working with the spirit world. Again, don't tell yourself you can't feel anything. Just be careful. You tell yourself you can't do these things or things are in the way. You will make that happen for yourself, right? Spin the positive on that. I'm not sensing this. Okay, so how can I go about sensing this? Now, what do I need to do to go about sensing this rather than telling yourself you can't sense something? You see, just turn it into a positive. So let me see. If I somebody asked me the difference between imagination and actual events. Actual events, I don't know. That's a question for the philosophers. Are actual events real? Either. And I could ask a whole bunch of philosophers, they'll tell you none of it's real. Can daily connection with spirit guides be maintained? I ask, and I find it difficult to do this. Well, you don't maintain connection with your spirit guides on a daily basis. They are just present on a daily basis. So you don't go around trying to drag them around with you, holding a seat in the bus for them. They're just there. They're always just there. So you don't actually actively have to maintain a connection with your spirit guides. If you are working on something or you want their help in something you're working on, you can sit in your meditation practice, you can talk to them, whatever, just sit quietly, talk to them, tell them, I really want to develop more cognition, I really want to be able to understand more information. Whatever it is you want to develop more of, you just sit and you just talk to them, and then you just hand it over. Let them find the way. We don't go around, we don't need the spirit guide sending us butterflies and robins and rainbows and all that. It just doesn't work like that, right? So again, let's get into a more sophisticated understanding, more 21st century understanding of the flow of the stream of consciousness and how we all live, exist and work within it. So I hope that helps. I hope that's not too riddle me this. Right. So somebody asked me if they took my shift class, can you take an advanced mediumship class? I think, Grace, you're asking me that. No, the shift class wouldn't qualify you for an advanced mediumship class because we didn't do foundational mediumship work in that. That was about mysticism. But you could do the Mediumship Foundations Masterclass. If you do that practice into the logbooks, The reason I say that is because in the advanced class, I need people who have reached a certain level so that we can advance the mediumship. If I have beginners in an advanced class, I end up having to spend half the time teaching beginners at the expense of being able to advance into new, more experimental forms of mediumship. That's why I've split this up now to beginners. Do all your foundational work. When you've got all of that done and you can come to your practice circles, then we'll go into much more. So like, we're working with storytelling and Zen next course up. The course after that, we're working with Zen and embodiment. We're working with very advanced ways of working within mediumship. So you need to be able to receive evidence, have developed your clairs. You need to be able to place contacts. You need to be able to do that reliably before you can move into an advanced class. So if you do either my foundational and my two beginners and intermediate courses, or you have done foundational work with somebody else who I know, or whose work at least I know, you can get an exemption to come to an advanced class. But definitely, when I say somebody I know, it would have to be somebody within my own style, own lineage. So probably somebody who has also trained at the Arthur Findlay College, like Mayers or Colin Bates or somebody like that. Just because there's all sorts of stuff going on out there, and I'm really trying to do something this year with mediumship to really advance it for the 21st century. So this is why I've kind of separated the classes out like that. So Victoria, is it ethical to give a message to somebody about a loved one if they did not ask you for it, but they just gave you the message? I would say no. It's like if you're an acupuncturist, you don't start putting needles in people in the vegetable aisle of the supermarket because you think they've got a pain in their back. Do you know what I mean? You don't know how somebody's going to receive that message. You don't know if they believe or they don't believe. If they do believe, you don't know how much. They could be one of the Homer types who think, oh my God, if a medium's getting a message, my loved one must be trapped and unable to go into the light. You have no idea what their beliefs are to step into that. Now, if it's somebody you know quite well, you could sort of feel them out in the conversation over a period of time. There's actually a scene about this in my book, in Till Death Don't Us Part, where I was sitting under a tree with my friend Justin when his friend's mother popped along. But it must have been an hour of just chit-chat, and then slowly broaching, would you believe and what would you think if this happened and blah, 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 before I felt it was safe to actually tell him the woman was beside me. You know what I mean? But you would not just blurt that out to anybody ever, right? I don't care if the loved one in the spirit world is there. You can't just go up to because what if you trigger something? You're not qualified to deal with that, right? So you wouldn't go up and start giving therapy to somebody in the street. So we don't want to be doing this. Right? I absorb too much. How can I protect myself? So you don't need to protect yourself. Protect is one of those really old words where we start thinking, oh, there's some negative thing out there. I need to protect myself. Everybody who does mediumship is sensitive. Everybody who works with mediumship healing picks up everybody else's energy. It just goes with the territory. What you need to do is learn self-care practices. So you need to know when to retreat. You need to also, the more healing you can do for yourself, the less you will take other people's behaviors. This is one thing that happens when you increase our sensitivity, is like somebody looks sideways at us and we think, oh God, I've done something terrible, something wrong with me. Do you know what I mean? You can take these things very personally. The more healing you do for yourself, the less affected you are by other people's opinions, thoughts, or what they're projecting onto you. It's their stuff, not your own stuff. This is why I say all mediums should do a substantial amount of their own healing before sitting in front of a vulnerable person, you know. A lot of that is just, I can't handle crowds. I am the worst person in a party. People don't even invite me to parties anymore because I won't go. Because it took me 2-3 days. I've just been flat out to recover. I had to take 2 cats to the vet yesterday, and it took me all day yesterday to recover. It's like, it takes time. You just need to learn self-care. You need to recognize that you go into a very busy space with a lot of people, it's going to wear you out. And you're going to need to make sure the next day you have time to yourself for a bath or shower or lie in or whatever it may be. You also will find that if you are with individuals, it's very easy. This doesn't stop. You'll be with somebody or you'll just meet somebody and they just rub you up the wrong way, and that happens whether you're sensitive or not, but when you're sensitive it amplifies it. Again, the more healing you do for yourself, the more mindful you are yourself, the quicker you will recognize oh, that's coming from that person. This is not me. Because sometimes it can be hard to tell. I was in a good mood. Now I just sort of going around, sort of feeling like doom and gloom. You're like, how did that happen? Why do I feel so gloomy? Because you just met your neighbor who's doom and gloom, picked it up from them. But the more you can recognize that's somebody else's stuff, the quicker you can go back and that's not me. That's them. Let me go back and recapture my 8 o'clock joy before I met them. And so a lot of that becomes just that this is where the mindfulness, the meditation practice can really help as well. But it's not about protection, it's about self-care, right? We can't go out, get away from me, you're full of doom and gloom. We can just go, just recognize, oh, this person's mood or energy is really affecting me. Let's cut this conversation short and veer off. I've got a neighbour who every time I see him, he's like that, and I always have to pretend I've got frozen food in my bag, that I have to get it into the freezer to get out of there, because he always affects me like that. But we come up with these self-care remedies, not protective remedies, if that's better. Katrine, you're in Switzerland speaking. Yeah, so I have my friend, you could contact David Scherzer, is Swiss. And David Scherzer, are you on Facebook? Where's Katrine gone? If you're on Facebook, go look up David Scherzer. He's a friend of mine. He is a Swiss medium. I don't know if he runs a circle. I know he does teaching in Switzerland and in Germany, so he might be a good resource for you to check out. David Scherzer, Schieisser, Swiss guy, David Scherzer. All right. And then you can just let him know I sent you his way. Actually, he's got a website. Let me see if I got it here. David Scherzer, I think it is. Yeah, David Scherzer. Here it is. That's the website. Because you can check him out, see if he's got a circle. You might be able to recommend a circle or something. Oh, is that his website? Yeah, it must be. David Scherzer. There's something wrong. No, that's not his website. Hang on, sorry, wrong website. It's an artist. David Scherzer. Sorry, everyone. Oh, sorry, Blending Mind. This is it, sorry. Disregard that last website. It's this one, blendingmind.com. He's Swiss, so you could check in with him. All right. Okay, I think have I got everyone's questions? Yep, I think that's it. Pretty much all the ones that, oh wait, there's a couple more here. Can you explain further about shamanism and mediumship? Both can exist and believe they can help spirits cross over. Desta, I'm not getting into that because, so Desta's just asked me, can you explain about how shamanism and mediumship can both exist and believe they can help spirits cross over, also murder victims needing and wishing for help? I'm just going to say I don't believe that at all. I know it's in mediumship, that should not exist at all, because we know, and I've given a lecture on this, and you can find it on my YouTube channel, we know this from experience, that nobody dies alone. We know there's always a gathering around everybody who dies. I sat and identified and named the people sitting around a person's bed who are dying. And so it makes absolutely no sense that the gang all comes to collect somebody, to carry them across, and to bring them back into the stream or whatever, and what, loses them? It's nonsense, right? Absolute nonsense. I don't know why. I'm not even going to go into why people talk about that. Indigenous, I understand, it's a very different period. It's like saying, oh, in Homer's time, they believed if you didn't give them the right funeral rites, they were earthbound. But we no longer believe that. Some people still drag it along with them. We can certainly pray for people, but I guarantee you, the spirit world is far more powerful and more resourced when it helps people to heal after they die than we are. So it's the same with rescue circles, boggles the mind. When you sit and you work with people who are dying, it makes absolutely no sense. So we don't need to help people cross over. We can certainly pray. Our loving intention is always welcome, but we don't need to be building, big flaming circles in the sky to direct them through. They were doing that after that tsunami in Japan. I was like, oh my God. No wonder people think we're all nuts. More sophisticated on this. I would, if you take anything away from this session today, I would say take away the fact that mediumship is just work and practice and dedication and commitment. And secondly, we really need to advance our understanding of the nature of consciousness and spirit into what we know now from other disciplines exists in the 21st century, and drop all of the medieval, classical, everything, all of those fictions, fantastic fictions, all of their time, beautiful, but in reality have no bearing on us at the moment and our current understanding. We don't think the earth is flat anymore. Why are we still holding on to these beliefs? All right? So that's what you get from that. My grandparents, great-grandparents are reincarnated. Will I be able to contact them? So again, I don't believe, like I said, I'm not a reincarnation person. I have a very Zen approach to where reincarnation comes from. And I'm just going to say this. I want you all just to think for a minute, anyone who's interested in reincarnation, what I want you to think about. You're here, right? You are who you are at the moment. You're a sum total of your genes, your experiences, your makeup, your memories, your dispositions, your beliefs, all of these things. That's who you are, right? Now, take away your culture, take away your education, take away your genome, take away your parents, take away your formative years, take away all of your memories, and tell me what's left. Right? Nothing. The spirit is left. All of the rest of that conditioning is gone. So what's left, if that reincarnates, what's that got to do with you? So this is why in Buddhism, the fundamental tenet of Buddhism is there is no self. There is no self. We're just a part of a stream. So like within Buddhism, it's like Thich Nhat Hanh describes it beautifully. Like there's the ocean, right? The wave of consciousness. There is the ocean. And a wave arises, right? The wave arises, returns to the ocean, and the wave arises again. Is it the same wave? Right? All the waves are part of the ocean. None of the waves are the same, right? So there is a theory that we are and it seems to make sense that we would be multidimensional people. We have this very finite sort of idea of we are here and then we are there. There's some geography involved. This is, again, it's old school way of thinking. We can exist here and there at the same time, right? So if we exist here and there at the same time, the question of reincarnation becomes moot. The question of, oh, my grandparents were here and they're at the same time, and now they're not here, they're there. So have they reincarnated? Of course not. They're still there because we're all always there. Is that too riddle me this, or do you understand what I'm talking about? We are all always there, which means everybody else is all always there. Right? We are existing in multidimensionals. We understand that. We are existing in the body with an antenna tuning in the eternal consciousness. And I honestly, the thing about reincarnation is, unless somebody can come along and give absolute tangible evidence and proof that they are, oh, I'm your grandmother, I'm the 6-year-old kid, but I'm really your grandmother, and here's a bunch of tangible evidence about it, then I don't believe it, to be honest. I've come across this so much. And again, I've been a practicing Buddhist for 25, nearly 30 years now. And this is not Buddha Dharma. This is something that has been appropriated by the West from an Eastern philosophy. And I'll get off my soapbox about this at the moment. The reason why I get upset about these things is because I've seen people do so much harm with this. Somebody has father abused them. I've seen this. Somebody had a very abusive father. The father dies, and then they go to a medium, and the medium says, oh no, your father is not in the spirit world. He's reincarnated. He's having a good life here with somebody or other. And all of the trauma that person was carrying now cannot be resolved because they've been told that their father is just having a happy life over there now with the new family. It's absolute nonsense. There is no truth to it. It's just madness, absolute madness. Right? I had another guy, and then I'm going to move on from this topic, as you can see, I really get upset about this. I get upset about anything that does harm, and anything that is entirely and absolutely speculative. And this is a completely speculative question, right? I had a guy one time at the Casey Centre, actually, and he came in and he said that, he'd always wanted to talk to his father. His father died when he was very young. He'd never been able to talk to him because he went to a medium, and the medium said the father was reincarnated. So this poor guy was really upset. He never had an opportunity to get to know his father in spirit because his father had left him in this life and now had left him in the spirit world. Left this poor guy like this, right? And I said, oh, so of course, being a Buddhist, I'm like, that sounds like a load of nonsense. But I said, come in, we sit down. And as soon as I sat down, I said, I've got a man here. He looks like this, and he's sitting here, and he's rolling mala beads in a little thing, round thing, brown mala beads. And I said, yeah, that was my father. He used to have these little brown mala beads. Like the father had been there all the time trying to talk to his son. And then this medium tells him he can't because his father has abandoned him now twice. You see, people most of the time, if anything, honestly, if anything doesn't make sense, if anything cannot be verified, dismiss it. Because all it does is harm. All right? The spirit world is essentially and absolutely love. And we get these glimmers of it. We get these glimmers of it. Like in the East, they don't want, the whole idea is not to reincarnate. The whole idea is to live a life in such a way that you don't have to come back here, that you can get to nirvana. But in the West, because we've got a different egocentric way of seeing the world, we've got this notion that we, individuals, we keep reincarnating, which is completely impossible when we understand what the nature of consciousness, right? We can't reincarnate as the self because the self doesn't exist. Another wave can arise. But if it doesn't have our genome, our memories, our culture, our parents, our friends, our nothing, what is it? The other thing too is that any of you who've had this experience where you've got the tiniest sense of the absolute depth and unconditional love that exists in the spirit world, which I've had fleeting experiences of, it is so unbelievably magnificent that you spend your entire life chasing it again. And once you got there, I can guarantee you, if I got there and I got that for the whole period, I would, no way in hell would I be back. That's what the Buddha was talking about when he's talking about nirvana. Being one with the depth of this unconditional love that is so beyond our frame of reference and our language that it's not even possible to convey it. It's just called nirvana. And if you experience that, I guarantee you're not going to want to be coming back. So all of these things, I would just say challenge. I know that we've kind of gone off the story. We've gone off. The Dalai Lama just calls himself a man. He calls himself a monk, and he has gone on record with this. The monks around him go through this ritualistic Tibetan tradition of identifying things to determine who the Dalai Lama is. The Dalai Lama himself has said he is just a monk, right? He has even said that he believes the next Dalai Lama will come from the West. So the Dalai Lama himself has gone on the wave, has gone on record. He has talked about this quite a lot, right? Well, the question of if we're reduced, it's not that we are reduced to a wave, we become whole within the ocean. This whole reincarnation question is well beyond the remit of mediumship, which is this is about. So I can't go on about it any longer than that. What I would say is that we need to start to take away all of these parameters that we've built around ourselves in the West and to start to think in much more fluid, expansive, vastness of mind waves. And the interesting question is, what happens within the wave when we are out of our body? To me, that is the only interesting question about this whole subject. So I will leave it at that. Can we, anybody, any questions that have risen for you while we've been chatting here? We've gone on quite a long time, so we probably won't get a chance to do a practice. But has anybody got a question, anything that's kind of come up for you during this conversation that I haven't addressed? Just pop it. Where's my chat box gone? You can pop it in the chat. We'll take just a few more minutes. Okay, no questions, just thank yous. Okay, marvellous. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. What I would say is, since we didn't get a chance to do a practice, what I would recommend after this practice, if you go along to the community section of my website. There are a bunch of free resources there. What might be nice practice for you to do, there's, I think, a 20-minute practice on doing a trance channeling practice. Let me put that in the chat here for you. Chat to everyone. It's a 20-minute practice. If you want, you can pop off and make a cup of tea. If you've got 20 minutes, come back. If you go and join the community and you go to the guided meditations, it's free. So you go to the guided meditation section. There is a practice there, I think it's called Sitting in the Healing Powers, and I can't remember the name of it now. I can't remember it. But if you go there, there's a 20-minute practice, then that might be a nice practice for you to do after this session, just sort of get settled into the healing power that we've been talking about for the last hour and a half. And don't forget, if you want to do basic beginners and intermediate mediumship development, to do that, join our private practice circles and get your certificate of completion. Pop along to the Mediumship Intermediate page. We'll send you out the link with that as well, and you get both courses just for this month. They're $120 off just for this month if you get the bundle. So it's a very good foundation from beginning all the way up to intermediate. So that should be helpful for you as well. So thank you all for coming this morning. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been food for thought. I hope really it's been encouraging and that you were all encouraged to go, all right, I do have to practice, but that's normal. So please do. And please do be mindful, pay attention to your practice. If you can do this work, whether it's healing work, whether it's inspirational speaking, whether it's doing your eternal bonds and sharing positive experience with other people, please do that as well. We really need more people sharing positive experiences and enlightened experiences and not myths and misconceptions and superstitions. We really need a lot of positivity in our world at the moment. So please do share those positive experiences that you've had with other people, and remember, it's all ultimately unconditional love and compassion. And really somebody asked, do we have a spiritual purpose here? I say yes, our spiritual purpose here is to be of service and helpful to other people. So please take that with you. All right. Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend. And I will see you the next. Take care. Bye-bye.